So the B-24 was operated by British and US Air Forces, and later in the war by the Royal Australian Air Force as well. It was operated by the RAAF as part of both Bomber and Coastal Command, so it was, due to its long range, it was used to help with patrol and escort duties related to the convoys crossing the North Atlantic and submarine hunting, as well as part of Bomber Command with the RAAF. And the US Army Air Force, of course, operated in Europe as part of their bomber formations, undertaking strategic bombing in Europe, as well as in the Pacific theatre against the Japanese. So Australian crew members were operating this aircraft with those air forces, with the RAF in Europe, and also in India, as well as some operations with the US Army Air Force. But it was decided that it was necessary with the Pacific War and the way it was going, and the need to probably at some point consider an invasion of Japan, that the RAAF should stand up a number of squadrons to participate with the heavy bombing operations. So with that in mind, starting in 1944, squadrons were formed in Australia. Initially, training was undertaken by some crew members with the US Army Air Force in the Pacific to learn about flying and operating the aircraft. And then training squadron was set up at Tocumwal, New South Wales, to train the air crews and train the mechanics for future operational squadrons. So with that in mind, it was set up in Tocumwal, as I said, and from July 1944, the first missions of those trained personnel took off in Australia, with attacks into the north, from the northwest area, so from northern Queensland, Northern Territory and Western Australia, into Indonesia, into Borneo, and operations against Japanese ground targets and shipping were undertaken by the squadrons that were formed by the Royal Australian Air Force. So there was in total 10 RAAF organisations, RAAF organisations, that were equipped with the Liberators. So there were 7 bomber squadrons. The 12th, 21st, 23rd and 24th were based in Northern Territory at air bases at Long and at Fenton, that were near Douglasdale in the Northern Territory. And later they moved to Morotai in Indonesia to support Australian landings in Borneo. And when the war finished, they were used to repatriate Australian prisoners of war back to Australia. There was also a squadron, the 25th, based in Western Australia, and 2 in Queensland, the 99th and the 102nd. That's the 7 bombing squadrons that were established. There was also the training unit, as I mentioned, at Tocumwal, New South Wales, and 2 special squadrons, one of which was undergoing special operations for countermeasures, for radar countermeasures, and a second special squadron that was inserting Z special forces into various islands around the Pacific to support covert operations between against the Japanese. So these were the squadrons that were stood up. After World War II, the squadrons were stood down fairly quickly, and the RAAF migrated onto another heavy bombing capability. So that's a bit about the operational history of the B-24 throughout the war, and with the RAAF. It was used in all theatres. It was used extensively by the RAF in India and in the Burma campaigns. And so those 18,500 units that were built were put to good use in the war effort, both in Europe, flying out of England, North Africa, and also in the Pacific, as well as operations supporting maritime actions such as in the Atlantic. So some other things that are worth pointing out while we're here. Let's take a look at some things. Let me see here. We'll come over here. So this is a setup of the Sperry ball turret, which currently isn't installed in the plane. So that's the mount, which is used to lower the ball turret into its firing position when it's needed. The ball is retracted for takeoff and landing because the aircraft is so low strung that the ball turret would sit too proud of the lower fuselage and could get damaged. So this is it in its firing position, and it's retracted up using that post and the hydraulics. This is an operational twin Wasp engine, which they fire up sometimes, so I look forward to coming back for that. So it's the twin Wasp because it's got 2 banks of cylinders mounted in an interleaved pattern. It's both supercharged and turbocharged in this configuration. We'll go up these steps here and take a bit of a look into the tail plane. So if we step up into here, these are the waist gunner positions with the plexiglass you could see from outside. They've been rigged up with the feeders for the 50 caliber ammunition. Turning around, you can see into the tail plane. This is where the tail gunner turret will be mounted eventually. So that's the position. It's actually quite wide and spacious compared to B-17s. And looking forward, that wooden area there, that covers where the ball turret would go. So I'll pop out of here and go back and have a look into the Bombay area. So you can have a look. So I'll move further up the aircraft. So these are the roller doors. So these roll downwards when they move into position. So they follow that track and roll downwards. They're completely non-structural. They're just covers. I was making the point that for this particular aircraft, this member here, which you see running horizontally, which has the gantry on top of it, that is the entire lower structure, which is linking the front of the aircraft to the back of the aircraft, and above it is the wing. So there's a lot of load being taken by this one member here. There's also almost no bulkheads between it. So just this bulkhead here, and that's a lot of load going through one area. So here we're in the Bombay. So there's two bomb holding areas. This one forward, and this one aft. I'll pop out of here and move up to the forward Bombay. So from this Bombay, you can look forward into the cockpit, the 2 pilot positions. You can also look downwards through into here. So this takes you forward into the nose of the aircraft, which is where the bombardier lay for sighting the Norden bob sight, and where the nose turret access was from. So I'm actually very impressed with the setup here. It's got a great accessibility into the aircraft. So you can get in and see various nooks and crannies. They've got some excellent ancillaries, such as look-down radar units, the countermeasure radar units, the setup here of how the Norden bob sight works, all wired up and functional. So I've never seen anything like this before. The bomb sight itself, you can look down into the eyepiece. You can see what's going on down the target area. The bomb delay and count selector, the main switchboard, and actual release mechanisms all powered up and working together, as well as other displays such as an old-fashioned iron sight that the British were using early in the war, even a mock-up of the sight that was in the dam busters for their famous raids on the German dams. So if you get the chance, I recommend you come down here to Werribee in the western suburbs of Melbourne and check out the B-24 Liberator display that's here, and support the organisation as they try and get this important part of Australia's Air Force history from World War II back up and running. Well, not up and running, but at least in a trim where it can be appreciated as a complete aircraft. So thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed this video, a little different from my usual armoured vehicle stuff. I'll see you in a couple of weeks when I'm up in Queensland for Oz Armour Fest at the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum, and we'll have some more tanks then. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.